As soon as TJ Lane walked in, he was executing his plan, taking off his button-down shirt to reveal this. A white t-shirt with the word killer scribbled on it.
Behind the facade of youthful innocence, a sinister secret lurks. Meet the world's youngest serial killers.
Why did you kill her?
She wasn't taking care of my family.
Whose gruesome exploits will shatter your perceptions of childhood purity. Their twisted tales delve into the darkest depths of the human psyche, blurring the boundaries between good and evil beyond recognition. Join us as we delve into the heart of darkness, uncovering the shocking truths behind these youngest serial killers in the world and the unspeakable horrors that drove them to commit the unthinkable. James Fairweather. In the early hours of March 29, 2014, a chilling find in Castle Park shook the community to its core. A local resident stumbled upon a horrific scene at approximately 5 in the morning, unleashing a chain of events that would lead to the most extensive and intensive investigation in Essex Police's history. A gruesome scene unfolded before the man's eyes as he stumbled upon a brutally injured individual lying in a vast pool of blood, his body battered beyond recognition. The victim, later identified as 33-year-old James Atfield, also known as Jim, a beloved father of 5, had suffered devastating and catastrophic wounds inflicted by a sharp object, his body bearing the horrific hallmarks of a frenzied and vicious attack. The sheer brutality of the assault was shocking, with a staggering 102 stab wounds found on his body, targeting his head, eyes, and torso. Years before, Jim had survived a severe car accident that left him with a traumatic brain injury, resulting in lasting damage that impaired the left side of his body as well as his cognitive abilities. Tragedy struck again just 3 months after Jim's brutal murder, as a woman's lifeless body was discovered on June 17th at the Salary Brook Trails. The victim, 31-year-old Nahid Al-Manea, a Saudi Arabian national, had been subjected to a vicious attack, suffering a total of 16 stab wounds, including a gruesome slash through both eyes. Nahid had only arrived in the United Kingdom 6 months prior, eager to pursue her studies in the English language program at the International Academy. Her bright future was cruelly cut short by this senseless act of violence. The revelation came as a shock of horror and disbelief when it emerged that the perpetrator of the brutal and senseless murder was none other than 15-year-old James Fairweather, a student at Colchester Academy. Despite appearing to be a typical and unassuming teenager, Fairweather harbored a love for murder, hiding a malevolent intent behind a mask of normalcy. He had struggled in school, facing significant challenges due to undiagnosed dyslexia and relentless bullying over his physical appearance, particularly his prominent ears. The devastating loss of his grandmother in 2012 had a profound and lasting impact on him, seemingly fueling his descent into darkness. While he often expressed disturbing and chilling desires to become a murderer, his threats were dismissed as mere adolescent bravado and idle fantasy, until he carried out the heinous and unspeakable acts that claimed the lives of Jim and Nahid. Fairweather's stunning lack of empathy, remorse, and disregard for human life left everyone reeling, grappling to comprehend the sheer magnitude of his evil deeds. However, as the case unfolded, it became clear that Fairweather's motivations were far more sinister. He was revealed to be fixated on serial killers and had extensively researched cases where perpetrators had successfully pleaded manslaughter by reason of diminished responsibility. Chillingly, during his confession, Fairweather claimed to have heard voices in his head, commanding him to make a sacrifice. Fairweather's chilling confessions revealed a sinister intent to claim even more lives, with a staggering admission that he had planned to murder 15 additional individuals before his arrest. Fairweather's lack of remorse was further underscored by his ominous warning to police that if released on bail, he would continue his killing spree. His own mother was so horrified by his actions that she publicly denounced him as a monster. James Fairweather's unrepentant attitude and young age make him one of the most alarming and disturbing serial killers in recent history. In January 2016, Fairweather admitted to the heinous crimes, pleading guilty to the murders of Jim and Nahid. Following a thorough trial, he was convicted of both murders in April 2016 and received a life sentence with a minimum term of 27 years. When the judge delivered the sentencing, Fairweather displayed a chilling lack of emotion, casually shrugging his shoulders in a disturbing display of indifference, showcasing his utter disregard for the value of human life and the gravity of his crimes. Jasmine Richardson. The age-old adage, "love is blind," takes a dark turn in the tragic tale of Jasmine Richardson, a story so unbelievable and heart-wrenching that it defies comprehension. This is no ordinary love story, but a dark and twisted narrative that culminates in the ultimate sacrifice, the loss of loved ones. On April 23, 2006, the peaceful town of Medicine Hat, Alberta, Canada, was shaken to its core when 3 members of the Richardson family were brutally slain in their own homes. The masterminds behind this heinous crime were the family's own daughter, Jasmine Richardson, and her boyfriend, Jeremy Steinke, who claimed to be a werewolf. This gruesome tragedy sent shockwaves throughout the community and beyond, stunning the entire nation. The question on everyone's mind was, what drove a young girl to commit such unspeakable acts? To understand the events that unfolded, let's take a step back and explore how Jasmine Richardson and Jeremy Steinke first crossed paths. While it's been suggested that they met through the online platform known as Vampire Freaks, where both had profiles, a friend of Steinke's later revealed that the couple actually met in person at a punk rock concert in early 2006. It was a chance encounter that would ultimately lead to a tragic and devastating outcome. Steinke's presence on Vampire Freaks, a website known for its gothic and punk rock community, may have hinted at his darker interests, but nothing could have predicted the horror that would soon unfold. Prior to meeting Jeremy Steinke, Jasmine Richardson was known to be a vibrant and outgoing individual. However, her life took a drastic turn when she began dating 23-year-old Steinke, who was significantly older than her. Richardson, who was just 12 years old at the time, became enamored with the goth subculture, joining the online community Vampire Freaks and adopting a darker aesthetic, complete with heavy makeup to make herself appear older. Jeremy Steinke's childhood was a stark contrast from Richardson's, with an alcoholic mother and an abusive stepfather. He faced bullying at school and had even attempted suicide by the time he met Jasmine Richardson. As a coping mechanism, Steinke had created a fantastical persona, claiming to be a 300-year-old werewolf and wearing a vial of blood around his neck. However, his relationship with Richardson took a sinister turn when her parents, Mark and Deborah, discovered the truth and forbade their daughter from seeing him. The couple, angered by their orders, responded by going on a brutal killing spree, determined to kill anyone that would stand in the way of their relationship. On April 23, 2006, Jasmine Richardson and her boyfriend, Jeremy Steinke, perpetrated a tragic and brutal act, resulting in the deaths of her family members, Mark, Deborah, and 8-year-old Tyler Richardson, who were found in the basement and upstairs areas, respectively. A strong fear took hold, creating worry and concern that their 12-year-old daughter, Jasmine, had also fallen victim to the unspeakable tragedy, as she was nowhere to be found, sparking fears that she may have been abducted or worse. However, in a puzzling turn of events, Jasmine was located with her boyfriend the very next day in Leader, Saskatchewan, 130 kilometers away from the scene of the crime, leaving investigators, family members, and the entire community grappling with shock and disbelief. As they sat behind bars, Steinke's devotion knew no bounds, and he proposed to Jasmine, a move that raised eyebrows and sparked outrage. But that wasn't the only eerie coincidence. Just days before the murders, Steinke and his friends had watched the violent film Natural Born Killers, a movie that glorifies a couple's deadly rampage. Steinke's admiration for the film was unsettling, and his suggestion to recreate the carnage with Jasmine was a chilling precursor to the tragic events. Jasmine Richardson and Jeremy Steinke were both found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder. Notably, Richardson, who was just 13 years old at the time of her conviction, is believed to be the youngest person in Canadian history to be convicted of multiple counts of first-degree murder. Following her sentence, Richardson was granted freedom from all court-ordered conditions, restrictions, and supervision upon completion of her sentence in May 2016, marking a significant milestone in her case. Zachary Davis. Tragedy can strike in the most unexpected ways, and Melanie Davis's fate serves as a heart-wrenching reminder. Her life was brutally cut short by the very person she loved and nurtured, her own son. Despite his history of mental health struggles, no one could have foreseen the fateful night in August 2012 when the Tennessee teenager's inner darkness would escalate to unspeakable violence, leading him to beat his mother to death in a senseless act of brutality. On a day that appeared to be like any other, the Davis family, Melanie, her son, and his 16-year-old brother Josh, shared a seemingly ordinary experience, watching a movie together. However, upon their return home, a subtle yet ominous shift unfolded. Davis began meticulously packing a backpack and satchel with clothing, notebooks, a toothbrush, gloves, a ski mask, and a claw hammer. While it may have seemed like he was preparing to run away from home, a more malevolent intent lurked beneath the surface, foreshadowing a tragic event that would shatter the illusion of a normal day. Zachary, a reserved young boy, struggled with a history of mental health issues. Following the passing of his father, Chris, from amyotrophic lateral sclerosis in 2007, 9-year-old Davis spiraled into a downward path. His grandmother sought professional help, and a psychiatrist evaluated him, noting evident mental health struggles. Davis reported auditory hallucinations, leading to a diagnosis of schizophrenia and depressive disorder. While psychologists acknowledge that profound depression in the wake of a loved one's passing is a normal part of the grieving process, especially at a young age, Davis's journey through the bereavement process was truncated. He experienced initial numbness and depression, but failed to reach the recovery phase. This was partly due to his mother's decision to withdraw him from therapy shortly after it began, potentially leading to her untimely death. The 15-year-old was a social outcast, shunned by his peers. He had a peculiar demeanor, often speaking in a flat, whispery tone, and wore the same hoodie daily, giving off an air of eeriness. His mobile phone revealed a fascination with the darker side of life, with apps focused on serial killers and torture devices. Melanie retired to bed at 9 in the night, and as she slumbered, Zachary Davis crept into the basement, retrieved a sledgehammer, and stealthily entered her room. With a frenzy of violence, he struck her nearly 20 times, bludgeoning her to death. Covered in her blood, Davis proceeded to the family game room, where he doused the space in whiskey and gasoline before setting it ablaze. With the flames engulfing the room, he closed the door and fled the house. The blaze did not initially spread, and the older brother, Josh, was alerted to the danger by the sound of the fire alarm. Rushing to his mother's room, he was met with a gruesome scene, her lifeless body covered in blood. Managing to escape the inferno, Josh sought refuge at a nearby neighbor's house. Meanwhile, authorities apprehended Zachary Davis, who was nearly 2 miles away from the scene of the crime. Zachary revealed that he was driven by the voice of his deceased father, commanding him to commit the heinous act. When questioned by a detective if he would go back in time and change his actions, Zachary coldly stated that he would not only kill his mother again but also his brother, revealing a depth of darkness and calculation that left investigators stunned. The already disturbing nature of the murder is made even more unsettling by Zachary's complete lack of remorse or empathy. Instead of exhibiting any signs of regret or sorrow, he has been known to smile when reflecting on the brutal act. He has even been observed laughing as he describes the details of the crime, including the size and weight of the sledgehammer he used as a weapon. The case of Zachary raises a haunting question. Was he a lost and troubled soul or an embodiment of pure evil? Zachary was sentenced to life in prison for the brutal murder of his mother, plus an additional 20 years for attempted first-degree murder and aggravated arson. Regardless of whether the heinous act was driven by cold calculation or psychotic breakdown, the outcome is undeniably tragic, a family torn apart. Thompson and Venables. The abduction and brutal murder of 2-year-old James Bulger in 1993 was a crime that shocked and appalled the nation, leaving an indelible mark on British society. The perpetrators, John Venables and Robert Thompson, were merely 10 years old at the time, making the crime all the more unsettling. Security footage captured Thompson and Venables surveilling potential victims, seemingly choosing a target. The truant boys, habitually skipping school, spent the day engaging in petty theft, stealing assorted items like candy, batteries, a troll doll, and a can of blue Humbrol modeling paint. Alarmingly, one of the boys later confessed that their sinister plan was to kidnap a child, lure them to the bustling road adjacent to the shopping center, and push them into the path of oncoming vehicles. On that afternoon, 2-year-old James Patrick Bulger accompanied his mother, Denise, to the New Strand Shopping Center in Kirkby. In a moment of distraction, Denise released her son's hand to complete her purchase, only to realize he was gone. Security footage captured the chilling moment when Thompson and Venables approached James, took his hand, and led him away from the shopping center. The duo joked about pushing James into the canal, while another eyewitness described the heart-wrenching scene of James crying his eyes out at the canal. The perpetrators then callously continued their 2.5-mile journey across Liverpool. The boys subjected James Bulger to a relentless and vicious attack, perpetrating unimaginable cruelty. One of them hurled the stolen blue paint into Bulger's left eye, while they repeatedly kicked, stamped, and pelted him with bricks and stones. In a disturbing display of brutality, they forced batteries into Bulger's mouth. The climax of their savagery was the dropping of a 10-kilogram railway fish plate onto Bulger's head, inflicting a devastating 10 skull fractures. According to pathologist Alan Williams, the sheer magnitude of Bulger's injuries, a staggering 42 in total, made it impossible to pinpoint a single fatal blow. Thompson and Venables positioned Bulger's body on the railway tracks, using rubble to hold his head in place, in hopes that a train would strike him and his death would be disguised as an accident. However, after they fled the scene, a train tragically severed Bulger's body in two. 2 days later, a group of children discovered his remains. A forensic pathologist testified that Bulger had died before the train struck him. Investigators suspected sexual assault as Bulger's clothing had been removed, and the pathologist's report revealed that his foreskin had been forcibly retracted. Following the discovery of James Bulger's body, police swiftly obtained grainy video footage of his abduction from the New Strand Shopping Center, showing the two boys. The railway embankment where his body was found was soon transformed into a makeshift memorial adorned with hundreds of floral tributes. Thompson and Venables were charged with abduction and murder on February 20th, 1993, and were found guilty on November 24th, becoming the youngest convicted murderers in modern British history. They received indefinite detention sentences, remaining in custody until a parole board decision in June 2001 approved their release on a lifelong license at age 18. However, Venables repeatedly violated the terms of his release, resulting in multiple returns to prison, including in 2010 for breaching his license and again in 2017 for possessing child sexual abuse images. As of 2023, his appeals for parole had been denied, and he remained incarcerated. Thomas Michael Lane III. While many children would typically exhibit fear in a courtroom setting, Thomas Lane displayed a striking absence of fear throughout his trial, leaving some in attendance speechless. In a bold and provocative move, Lane removed his blue shirt to reveal a homemade killer t-shirt, eerily reminiscent of the sweatshirt he wore on the day of the school shooting. It all started on the morning of February 27, 2012, when Thomas Lane unleashed a devastating attack at Chardon High School in Chardon, Ohio, firing shots in the cafeteria that left 6 students injured, 3 of whom succumbed to their wounds. Notably, Lane wore a sweatshirt with the chilling word "killer" emblazoned on it. While many perceived him as a calm and collected individual, Lane's actions that day revealed a darker, more sinister aspect of his personality, one that would leave a lasting impact on the community. It has become apparent that many of the individuals involved in such tragic incidents often come from unstable household environments. Thomas Michael Lane III, despite residing in a quintessential Midwestern town, experienced a tumultuous upbringing. His father, Thomas Lane Jr., repeatedly cycled in and out of prison due to violent behavior, including domestic violence against Lane's mother, who also faced arrests for similar offenses. Consequently, Lane's parents lost custody, and he was placed in the care of his grandparents. Although he appeared kind and courteous on the surface, Lane struggled academically, which led to his transfer to the Lake Academy Alternative School in Willoughby, Ohio, following his first year. Thomas Lane opened fire on 6 students, 5 boys and 1 girl, in the cafeteria before fleeing and being apprehended by teacher Joseph Rizzi and coach Frank Hall. Lane's trial resulted in a swift conviction, but it was his courtroom behavior that garnered significant attention. During his sentencing hearing, Lane made a provocative statement by wearing a shirt with "killer" written on it, directed obscene gestures and language towards the victims' families, and even raised his middle finger in a brazen display of defiance. Eyewitnesses reported a personal vendetta between the shooter and one of the victims. 2 other students who were shot were hospitalized, one of whom suffered severe injuries resulting in permanent paralysis. Another student sustained a minor injury, and the 6th victim had a superficial wound. Lane used a 0.22 of an inch caliber handgun and was apprehended by police near his car outside the school. He was later indicted on multiple charges, including aggravated murder, attempted murder, and felonious assault. Due to his age, he was initially held as a juvenile, pending a decision on whether to try him as an adult. In May 2012, a judge ruled that Thomas Lane was mentally fit to stand trial, and subsequently, the decision was made to prosecute him as an adult. Lane pleaded guilty and received a sentence of 3 consecutive life terms without parole on March 19, 2013. However, on September 11, 2014, Lane attempted to escape from Allen Correctional Institution in Lima, Ohio, but was recaptured the next day, leading to his transfer, along with 3 other inmates, to a maximum security prison. Tori Adamick and Brian Draper. On the fateful morning of September 22, 2006, Brian Draper and Tori Michael, 2 high school students in Pocatello, Idaho, captured footage of themselves meandering through the school hallways with a camcorder. The shaky recording zooms in on their friend Cassie Stoddard, 16, standing at her locker, oblivious to the fact that it would be her last day on Earth. With a shy smile, she gazes back into the camera, unaware of the unspeakable horror that awaited her. Later that night, the same 2 friends who had filmed her would commit a heinous crime, taking her life in a brutal and unimaginable manner that would leave a lasting impact on their community. Brian Draper and Tori Adamczyk, 2 Idaho natives and juniors at Pocatello High School in Pocatello, Idaho, attended school alongside Cassie Jo Stoddard, a 16-year-old classmate and fellow 11th grader. Brian Draper, who spent his early years in Utah, relocated to Pocatello, Idaho with his family, where he met Tori Adamczyk at Pocatello High School. Sharing a passion for filmmaking, the two boys began creating their own videos. On the fateful evening of September 22, 2006, Cassie Stoddard was entrusted with house-sitting duties at her aunt and uncle's residence, Allison and Frank Contreras, situated on Whispering Cliffs Drive in northeast Bannock County. As the Contreras family embarked on a weekend getaway, they entrusted Cassie Stoddard with the care of their pets, 3 cats and 2 dogs. That evening, Stoddard's boyfriend, Matt Beckham, paid her a visit, arriving at the cozy abode. Later, classmates Brian Draper and Tori Adamczyk, both 16 at the time, dropped by to join in on the fun. Stoddard gave her friends a grand tour of the house, including the basement. The foursome then gathered in the living room to watch the action-packed film Kill Bill Volume 2. However, Adamczyk and Draper suddenly left, claiming they wanted to catch a movie at the local cinema instead. Unbeknownst to Stoddard, Draper had secretly unlocked the basement door before their departure, paving the way for a stealthy re-entry. Later, Draper and Adamczyk returned to the neighborhood wearing sinister costumes, dark attire, gloves, and white masks, trying to recreate the infamous Scream movie. They snuck back into the house through the basement door, while Beckham and Stoddard were engrossed watching television in the living room. The boys attempted to lure them downstairs with loud noises, but their efforts failed. Next, they targeted the circuit breaker, plunging the house into darkness, hoping the couple would investigate. When their plan didn't work, they partially restored the power, setting the stage for a chilling confrontation. As the power flickered back on, Stoddard's unease grew, and Beckham noticed the Contreras dog fixated on the basement stairs, its intermittent barks and growls heightening the tension. Sensing Stoddard's fear, Beckham sought to reassure her by asking his mother if he could stay over, but she refused, instead offering to take Stoddard to their home for the night and return her the next morning. However, Stoddard felt a strong sense of responsibility to fulfill her duties as a house-sitter and care for the animals, and she bravely declined the offer, opting to stay in the house despite her growing apprehension. After Beckham's mother arrived to take him home, Stoddard was left alone in the house. From their hiding place in the basement, Draper and Adamczyk waited until they heard Beckham's departure. They then cut the power again, hoping to lure Stoddard downstairs. When she didn't take the bait, they crept upstairs, armed with weapons they had purchased at a pawn shop, Draper with a dagger-like weapon and Adamczyk with a hunting knife. Draper deliberately slammed a closet door at the top of the stairs to terrify Stoddard, who was lying on the couch in the living room. The boys then launched a vicious attack, stabbing her approximately 30 times, with 12 of the wounds deemed potentially fatal. During the investigation of the murder, police found that Draper and Adamczyk had recorded their plan to murder Stoddard in advance on videotape while they were at school. This video footage was shown at their trials. On September 27, 2006, Draper and Adamczyk were taken into custody and charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. During the subsequent interrogations, Draper led investigators to Black Rock Canyon, where the duo had attempted to destroy evidence by burning and burying their clothing, masks, and weapons. It was there that police recovered a partially burned Sony tape, which, after restoration, revealed chilling video footage of the teens' premeditated plan to murder Stoddard. Draper and Adamczyk alarmingly revealed that they had previously attempted to take a life on at least 10 occasions, but their plans were consistently thwarted. Draper confessed that he harbored a deep desire for popularity and believed that committing murder would be the most effective way to achieve this twisted ambition. The pair also drew disturbing parallels between themselves and the infamous Columbine High School shooters, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, who infamously claimed the lives of 12 classmates and a teacher in 1999. Ed Kemper. From a young age, Ed Kemper exhibited troubling behavior, demonstrating a penchant for violence by killing animals, decapitating his sister's dolls, and concocting sinister games. This disturbing trajectory escalated at age 15, when he committed the heinous murder of his grandparents, marking a point of no return in his descent into darkness. Edward Kemper was born on December 18, 1948, in Burbank, California, to Edmund Jr. and Clarnell Kemper. He had two sisters and was deeply attached to his father, sharing a special bond that would later be disrupted. His life took a tumultuous turn in 1975 when his parents divorced and his mother relocated the family to Helena, Montana, a move that would have a profound impact on his young mind. Despite his exceptional intelligence, later measured at an IQ of 145, Kemper exhibited concerning behavior from an early age, displaying sociopathic tendencies that would only intensify with time. He engaged in pyromania, setting fires that seemed to bring him a twisted sense of comfort, and used his sister's dolls to act out gruesome murders and bizarre sexual rituals, often decapitating them in the process, a chilling precursor to the atrocities he would later commit. He derived twisted pleasure from inflicting suffering and death on cats, brutally stabbing one to death and subjecting another to a gruesome fate, burying it alive, exhuming it, decapitating it, and displaying its head on a pole. He harbored a morbid fascination with capital punishment, often reenacting mock executions with his sisters, simulating the electric chair. His mother, who was emotionally abusive, would confine him to the rat-infested basement, fearing he might harm his younger sister. The intensity of his emotions led him to flee his mother's home at just 13 years old, embarking on a journey to reunite with his father in California. However, his dreams of a warm welcome were shattered when he discovered his father had remarried and showered affection on his new stepson instead. Crushed, Kemper was forced to return to his mother's care. The following year, at 14, he was sent to live with his paternal grandparents, Edmund Sr. and Maud Kemper, on their ranch in North Fork, California. It was there that Kemper's dark trajectory took a deadly turn as he committed his first murder. Despite his towering height of 6 feet 4 inches, he was bullied by his classmates and struggled to get along with his grandmother, further fueling his simmering anger and resentment. On August 27, 1964, Kemper's long-simmering tensions with his grandmother reached a boiling point, culminating in a heated argument that ended in tragedy. In a fit of rage, the 15-year-old Kemper fatally shot his grandmother, Maud Kemper, in the head with a rifle he had received as a Christmas gift the year prior. As his grandfather approached the house, unaware of the horror that awaited him, Kemper shot him as well, ostensibly to spare him the anguish of discovering his wife's lifeless body. Following his grandfather's death, Kemper made 2 consecutive phone calls, the first to inform his mother of his actions, and the second to notify the local authorities. He then calmly sat on the porch, awaiting their arrival. He was taken into custody, diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and committed to the Atascadero State Hospital for the criminally insane. Despite his dark past, Kemper surprisingly formed a positive bond with his psychiatrist, and he was even entrusted with the responsibility of serving as his assistant. However, on his 21st birthday, December 18, 1969, Kemper was released from the hospital against the strong objections of several psychologists and was placed in the care of his mother in Santa Cruz, a decision that would later prove to be a tragic mistake. Unfortunately, Kemper's release from custody marked the beginning of a devastating and unimaginable killing spree, targeting young women, mostly teenagers to mid-20s, who were students at the same college where his mother worked. With the exception of his mother and Sally Hallett, all his victims during this period were hitchhikers who had accepted rides from him. He would drive them to secluded areas, engaging them in conversation before brutally murdering them through various methods, including shooting, stabbing, and strangling. Kemper would then take their bodies to his room, where he would perform grotesque experiments, mutilate, and engage in sexual acts with their lifeless bodies. He also decapitated their heads and committed necrophilia, leaving a trail of unspeakable horror in his wake. After subjecting the bodies to unspeakable horrors, Kemper would discard them in remote areas, often throwing them into ravines or gorges. In a chilling gesture, he buried the severed heads of some victims in his mother's garden, claiming it was a perverse attempt to fulfill her desire for admiration. Despite his later confessions to the killing spree, the police were initially skeptical. They had known Kemper as Big Ed, a seemingly gentle giant, and struggled to reconcile this image with the heinous crimes he had committed. Little did they know, Kemper's imposing stature belied a monstrous personality. On November 8, 1973, a jury of 6 men and 6 women deliberated for 5 hours before delivering a verdict. Kemper was deemed sane and guilty on all counts. In a surprising move, Kemper requested the death penalty, specifically asking to be tortured to death, but was denied by the Supreme Court of California. He instead received a sentence of 7 years to life for each count, to be served concurrently. He was subsequently incarcerated at the California Medical Facility in Vacaville. Amarjit Sada. As far as serial killers go, Amarjit Sada holds the disturbing distinction of being the youngest serial killer in recorded history, committing heinous crimes between 2006 and 2007. At just 8 years old, he claimed his first victim, going on to kill 2 more children. The sheer brutality of his actions is made even more shocking by the circumstances that enabled him to carry out such atrocities at such a tender age, leaving many to grapple with the unsettling reality of his crimes. Born in 1998 in Bihar's Musahar village, his victims were all under a year old, and he murdered 3 infants in total. He started by killing his 8-month-old sister, followed by his 6-month-old cousin. He evaded detection until he murdered a 6-month-old baby from a neighboring family, after which he confessed to the crime, revealing that he had taken the child from daycare and fatally struck her head with a stone, ultimately leading to his capture by the police. The revelation that an 8-year-old boy, Amarjit Sada, had committed multiple murders was utterly shocking. Sada's early life wasn't what most kids have. He was raised in a poverty-stricken and abusive environment with a dysfunctional family that provided little parental guidance or care. He suffered neglect, witnessed domestic violence, and was exposed to disturbing content from a young age, likely having a profound and lasting impact on his psychological development. There were several red flags that hinted at Amarjit Sada's propensity for violence. These warning signs included cruelty to animals, a fascination with fire setting, and an unsettling lack of emotional response to disturbing situations. If addressed and intervened upon early, these behaviors could have potentially prevented the escalation of his violent tendencies. A psychologist assessed him as a sadist who derives pleasure from causing harm. According to reports, during his interrogation at the Bhagalpur police station, 8-year-old Amarjit Sada requested biscuits before responding to the officer's questions. The investigation into Sada's involvement in the infant's murder began after he allegedly confessed to villagers, revealing the location of the baby's body. Subsequently, Sada was arrested and brought to court to face charges for the murders. Due to his minor status at the time of the crimes, Amarjit Sada was placed in a remand home in Munger, instead of facing prison or the death penalty. Following his arrest, Amarjit was placed in a children's home until he turned 18, after which he disappeared from public view, making many people speculate about his whereabouts. Thank you for watching. See you in our next video.